Was your at-home rapid antigen COVID 1984 test negative? Well, do it again, says the FDA. You swabbed the inside of your nose and you performed the at-home rapid antigen test for COVID 1984, and thankfully, it was negative. Well, hold on. Do the test again, says the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, whether or not you have symptoms. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is advising people to perform repeat or serial testing if you get a negative result on any of the at-home COVID 1984 antigen tests in order to reduce the risk of infection that may be missed, also known as a false negative result. And of course, the FDA wants to recommend that you repeat testing following a negative result, even if you don't have COVID 1984 symptoms, ladies and gentlemen. And as if that wasn't bad enough, they want you to continue this process every 48 hours. Even if you do not have COVID 1984 symptoms, they want you to test again after 48 hours. And if you get another negative, you test again after 48 hours. And then even if you get a negative result on the third test, you may want to choose to test again. On and on it goes until you eventually get that positive result, which they're looking for, so as to increase the fear state in an effort to continue with the global inoculation program. Now, this seems in stark contrast to what the CDC is doing right now, as they have just announced new COVID 1984 restriction guidelines that focus on individual decisions now. CDC just released revised guidelines that lift the requirement to quarantine if you're exposed to COVID 1984. It de-emphasizes screening people with no symptoms, kind of direct contrast to what the FDA is saying, and it updates COVID 1984 protocols in schools, eliminating a recommendation for tests to stay after potential exposure. And meanwhile, in Denmark, they're ending the whole vaccination program for anybody under the age of 50, as they're now shifting into treating COVID like the flu. Denmark's policy towards vaccination in the autumn of 2022 is going to focus on people over the age of 50. The under 50s will only get a booster if a doctor recommends it. That's right, the Danish Health Authority has phased out the vaccination program. That started back in May. So what is this phasing out program going to mean to you? What does the phasing out program mean? Well, what this means is as of May 15th, 2022, invitations to be vaccinated will no longer be sent out. So they're not kind of, recruiting and begging and looking for you to go get this. It's now going to be left up completely to the individual, and that's pretty awesome. But taking it even a step further, get a load of this. Costa Rica has announced that COVID 1984 vaccines are not mandatory, but not only that, on Wednesday, President Rodrigo Chavez and his health minister confirmed that the vaccine against COVID 1984 will not be mandatory in Costa Rica. Today, vaccines are no longer mandatory, and any action against someone who does not want to be vaccinated is a violation of the law. Wow, pretty brave, and about time for somebody to stand up for the unvaccinated rights like that. I hate to say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the very near future we learned that this man, the president of Costa Rica, ends up committing suicide by shooting himself 3 times in the back. I hope that's not the case, but let's pay attention to that moving forward. Meanwhile, in other news, guys, COVID study calls on pregnant women in the South to help with research. That's right, they're currently looking for women aged 18 to 45 who are low risk, carrying 1 baby, and who are between 13 and 36 weeks pregnant. They hope to discover the best dosage and schedules of vaccines in order to protect women and babies from the virus. It's like, wait a minute, shouldn't this have been done years ago? Why is this currently happening right now, especially when the CDC for years has been saying it's perfectly safe for pregnant women to get vaccinated? It says COVID-19 vaccination is recommended for all people 6 months and older. This includes people who are pregnant. Notice they won't use the word women who are pregnant, but they say people who are pregnant, breastfeeding, or trying to get pregnant, or might become pregnant in the future. The CDC also recommends COVID-19 vaccines for infants 6 months and older whose mother was vaccinated or had a COVID infection before or while getting pregnant. So the CDC has clearly been saying all this time that that it's perfectly safe and you should go out and do it. Yet there are still currently to this day studies looking to figure out what the proper dosages is for the mother and the baby in the womb. It's just remarkable, guys, that that this stuff is going on. And get a load of this one, guys. This is absolutely insane. Unvaccinated mothers are facing up to $50,000 in maternity leave repayment to the BC government. So real quickly, long story short here, you know, a bunch of women in BC, before the mandatory vaccine programs came into effect, took their maternity leave option where they get 80% of their salary while they're at home with their newborn babies. While they were doing that, the policies changed. The government said it's going to be mandatory. So their employees said, you have to come back to work vaccinated. And if you don't, that is a violation of the terms. You're going to have to pay back all that money. So it's get the jab or pay tens of thousands of dollars in fines or simply lose your job and don't come back to work. Unbelievable what we're seeing here in BC. So we're going to take a look at that, guys. Meanwhile, why would you even want to continuously get this? Why are these mothers refusing this in the first place? Well, it could be stuff like this. New study here. Pfizer COVID vaccine efficacy wanes 27 days after a dose in the second dose in teens. So if you thought, you know, getting a test every 48 hours was bad, just imagine getting a vaccine once a month as they continue to set up this subscription model on your immune system, which has been the plan all along, which I've been talking about over the years. So we're going to talk about all that and much more, especially considering the fact that, you know, you got Costa Rica moving back on this, you got Denmark moving back on this, you got the CDC, you know, shifting towards a focus on individual solutions, all while China is in the middle of locking down millions and millions of people. And as I've always said on this channel, we have to look to China as the blueprint for the West, because often a lot of the things that we see happening there first will start to make their way over here. And this is why I've often talked about how we are currently in the eye of the hurricane. It's the calm before the storm. And I think this is why the FDA is currently ramping up this need to get the fear state going again by upping the positive results from tests. So we're going to talk about all of that, guys, and much more in this video. But really quickly, I'd ask that if you do appreciate my efforts, that you check me out here at pressfortruth.ca/donate. Here you can do one-time donation with PayPal. You can do Bitcoin. You can do other cryptocurrencies. You can join me on Subscribestar, which is a great Patreon alternative. I have been kicked off of Patreon. You can also do that right here. Sign up for a monthly reoccurring contribution. Guys, any amount is greatly appreciated. If you're Canadian, it's particularly easy to send an e-transfer to dan@pressfortruth.ca, or if you like to keep things old school as I do, you can send stuff to my P.O. box, guys. Links for all of that are located in the description below. Thank you so much to anybody who does take the time to contribute to my efforts here at Press for Truth. All right, it's interesting the contradiction going on here with the global view as to the seriousness of COVID-1984 right now, as millions of people are currently plunged into lockdown in China. All the while, you got the CDC easing up on restrictions here in the West. You have places like Costa Rica saying it's going to be against the law to force a vaccine on somebody. You got the, people in Denmark saying, lay off our kids. In fact, keep it away from anybody under the age of 50, all while the FDA is ramping up their efforts to keep the fear state going. It's just remarkable. So let's take a quick look at this. They are advising people to perform repeat or serial testing if you get a negative result. They want you to continue doing this even if you have no symptoms. So recommendations before you use this test, be aware that they're less accurate than the molecular tests. They also want you to make sure you have multiple ones of these. Get ready to have several tests on hand. In fact, I saw in a video I posted like about a week ago or so they were giving out these home tests, and every household would get 16 kits per household. Again, that's because they want you to continue to test every 48 hours, even if you don't have symptoms, so that you can eventually hit that positive result. It's absolutely mind-boggling that they can just openly say this and people don't see it for what it is. So it says here, if you're using it at home and if you receive a positive result initially or after one of the repeat tests, well, this means that the test detected the virus. So if it comes out as positive, it detected the virus. So it works. If the result is positive, it works, and you most likely have COVID-1984. Now, if you get a negative result, and it didn't detect the virus, well, you may just want to test again after 48 hours. And then after another 48 hours after that, you may choose to test again. And here, even if you do not have COVID-1984 symptoms, and yet you believe you still might be exposed to COVID-1984, well, test again after 48 hours after the first one, and then 48 hours after the second one, for a total of 3. But that's still not even technically enough for them. They say if you get a negative result on the third test and you are still concerned that you could have COVID-1984, again, this is people who don't have symptoms. You don't have symptoms, you've been tested 3 times in a row negative, but you're still concerned, they suggest you just go ahead and do that test once again to ensure they get that positive result. I mean, it seems so obvious to me what's happening here. That they're using the home antigen rapid tests as a way to get those positive case numbers up, so that when you report these case numbers, that goes straight to the mainstream media, and they can continue to ramp up that fear state, because it's all about continuing the global inoculation program. So as I said, these stories about the CDC easing up and places like Denmark and Costa Rica kind of taking 2 steps back, sounds great on the surface, but I think, as I said, this is, first of all, inevitable, but second of all, it is all going to come back with a vengeance in the fall. This is something I've been warning about for quite some time, and I certainly haven't changed my view, because I can kind of see the calling card for what they are. I see all the signs, I'm connecting all the dots, as I have been over the past couple of years, and it seems clear to me we're not out of this by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we're currently living in there was a pre-COVID-1984 world, and now it's the post-COVID-1984 world, as I said, where it's venturing into an area of having like a subscription-based model on your immune system, and people seem to be okay with this. And when they see articles like this, if you get tested negative, just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going until you get that positive result. It's absolutely unbelievable. And look at these women who, don't want the vaccine and are currently being forced to potentially get it if they want to come back to work. Here's just the key points from this article. For these women, maternity leave started before October 2021 and before any provincial vaccine mandates were announced for BC Public Health Service workers. So they all decided to accept the government's top-up benefit, which pays 80% of the usual salary in a given position, and they're expected to go back to their job on the predetermined return-to-work date. Now, this is agreed upon with the knowledge that if you quit or you find another job, or otherwise you miss your return-to-work date, well, you're going to be liable to pay back that amount. This return-to-work date can't be postponed. So the province ended up instituting its vaccine policy for employees in November of 2021. So there's already a bunch of women who left in October, and this requires their employees to be vaccinated in order to continue to work. So if a mother on maternity leave is unvaccinated and is denied an exemption, they are in a position to miss their return to work date and be liable to have to pay back the entirety of the top-up benefit, from anywhere from $20,000 to all the way up to $50,000 in some cases, or they can prove vaccination and return to work without a problem. So that's your options. I think it's obviously coercion, and it's, not until way down in the bottom of the article they say that one particular mother seems to think that that's the case. Here, another mother described her situation as coercion. Submit to the policy or lose your job and owe us tens of thousands of dollars. When asked about this, the public service representative said, well, that's just an opinion. That's an opinion about someone who's not liking the terms of employment. So this is what they're doing to mothers in BC who left on a contract. The contract changed from their employer because of the BC government announcing these new mandates, and they're being forced to either get the vaccine or not only not return to work, but be forced to pay back all that money. Absolutely bonkers what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. Just wanted to bring that one to your attention. I'm sure this one's not going to go away. There's going to be constitutional challenges to this. And hopefully, some of these mothers who don't want to do it don't just, cave for the sense of the job. In fact, I don't know a single person who has taken the vaccine for legitimate health reasons because they're genuinely afraid of contracting COVID-1984 and getting sick enough to die from it or something like that. Not a single person, but I know dozens of people who have taken the vaccine strictly as a result of being coerced into doing so. Not because they're afraid that they're going to get sick, not because they even think that if they do get sick, they're even going to have a problem. I'm sure they know they can handle it just like the flu. No, the problem is they did it because they wanted to travel, they did it because they wanted to go to restaurants or bars or sporting events, or because their employer said that unless they do so, they can't come back to work. That is absolute coercion. That is downright just evil in my mind. I think, history is going to look back at this time as those of us who are on the right side of history and those of us who are completely on the wrong side of history. And as I speak today, right now, the Chinese government is certainly on the wrong side of history as they are taking, no chances right now, completely locking down millions and millions of citizens as part of their dynamic COVID zero strategy. The aim is to avoid turning efforts to halt an outbreak into the extended nightmares seen recently in Shanghai, where the city's 26 million people faced a daunting lockdown for several months earlier this year. Again, we look to China as the blueprint for what we can expect coming to the West, and I do suspect that we will have, as I said, more strict lockdown measures, more strict guidance from the CDC, which will be once again updated, indoor masking, passports for going to restaurants, strict lockdown in homes. I hate to say it, it's all coming back, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't mean to sound like an alarmist or a defeatist, but this is alarming stuff that we have to be aware of. And the ways that we can continue to protect ourselves against this is maybe you could do some of the things that I've been doing. I've never ever been tested. I don't have a television. I don't subscribe to cable. I don't listen to the news on the radio. I'm not being bombarded and brainwashed and programmed to accept this so-called reality. Rather, I am, exposing the propaganda for what it is, and rather focusing on continuing to live the most self-sustainable lifestyle as possible, not relying on the governments, not relying on the banks, and eventually not relying on the grocery stores as well. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm certainly taking all the right steps to get there. And if you guys are not also doing that, well, you're already a couple of steps behind. So I would encourage you to work on getting yourself out of debt. I know that that's easier said than done in this current debt-based system that we're essentially born into. But it can be done, especially if you lower your standards of living and you have something smaller that you completely own 100% outright. It's yours, is far better off than having some kind of a nice big fancy place with a mortgage where they then have their fingers around your neck and they can squeeze at any time they want. The best option is to completely be self-sustainable, and that's truly the number one enemy of the government moving forward, is those of us who have realized that this entire system is set up in a pyramidal structure. It's all of us who make up the base of this thing. And once more of us realize that and continue to step out of the system, well, when you take the bottom brick out of a pyramid, what happens? The whole thing starts to come crumbling down. They know how fragile this system is. That's why there's been such an attack on so-called anti-vaxxers over the last couple of decades. No, we are just people who have had legitimate questions and concerns. And now, in this post-COVID 1984 nightmarish world, everybody is starting to see just why we were doing that. Once again, guys, if you appreciate my efforts to continuously bring you this information and try to counter all the propaganda that we're currently being bombarded with, I would ask that you don't forget to check me out here, pressfortruth.ca/donate. Links are going to be located in the description below. Once again, I want to thank everybody who has taken the time to support my efforts here at Press for Truth to bring you this information. So that's all for today, guys. I want to thank you once again for tuning in. Don't forget to click that thumbs up button. Subscribe to me here if you haven't already, whether you're watching on BitChute or Odyssey or Minds or Rumble or Float or maybe even YouTube. I just found out that something like 80% of the people who watch the videos on my channel are not even subscribed. So if you are watching, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to leave a comment, click that thumbs up button, share this video with your friends and family who you think need to see it the most. And that's it for today, my friends. Thank you once again for watching. Stay tuned. We're going to have more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.